I've always loved movies. They play a pivotal part in life and can teach us themes and messages that may be hard to convey to kids or adults alike. They can give us a different perspective on life, teach us about cultures and social issues, and entertain us for hours. And I think that movies have the power to change or impact our lives in both small ways and large. Join me as I share 5 movies that have profoundly impacted or changed my life in some sort of form. While I'll be sharing the core themes and the messages that I learned from these movies, I won't be spoiling the key parts of them because I really hope that you watch these movies and immerse yourself in the characters' worlds. Anyways, let's get straight into it. Me and Earl and the Dying Girl follows the story of Greg, who spends most of his time with his friend Earl. Greg's mum eventually forces him to hang out and befriend Rachel, who has just been diagnosed with leukemia. While neither of the two wants to hang out, as Rachel doesn't want a pity party, they strike up a friendship and spend a lot of time together. Greg is awkward, has terribly low self-esteem, and finds it hard to call people his friends because if they don't reciprocate that feeling, he thinks it'll be the worst thing in the world. This is where he calls his best friend Earl his co-worker. The two of them spend a lot of time making short films of popular movies, but changing the titles. To Greg's reluctance, Rachel wants to see these movies and, after watching them, thinks they're really cool and entertaining. It's probably one of my favourite coming-of-age movies, probably on par with The Perks of Being a Wallflower. I can't believe I've never heard of this movie before watching it, and it has a pretty stacked cast for being such a low-budget movie. I really resonated with this movie, as I had a lifelong friend battle with cancer for much of her teenage years, but unfortunately passed away only a couple of years ago. This movie really reminded me of her and how good of a person she truly was. This movie depicts friendship, enjoying life, making choices for yourself, and more. I really love this movie. It made me laugh, cry, empathize with Rachel and Greg, and it changed my outlook on life. I don't want to get too much into the plot, as I never watch any trailers and I jumped straight in and watched it, and I think you should do the same too. It's such a funny and quirky movie, it's original and has a great cast, but it also manages to tear your heart out in the same sentence. This movie taught me that life is all about making your own choices and reminded me of how kind and friendly my friend was until her passing. Much like Rachel in this movie and my late friend Maddie, cancer can take over your body, but it will never take over you as a person or your soul. About Time follows the story of Tim, who, at the age of 21, is told by his father that the men in their family can time travel. While they can't change the course of history, they can change the course of their lives by going back in time to remembering things and altering them. Tim moves to London and is excited to get a girlfriend. This story follows his many attempts to win Mary's heart with time travel and perfecting his interactions, but such as life is, time travel is never straightforward, and Tim learns that changing one thing in the past can drastically change others' lives in the present. About Time is such a great movie, but I put it off for so long because I just thought it would be another stock standard romance movie, which I now know it's not. The movie depicts themes of love, family, life, and loss, and focuses heavily on how our choices affect our future selves. About Time focuses on the relationship between Tim and Mary, but I thought the more impactful one was between the father and son. This movie taught me that you cannot have everything under control, and even in Tim's circumstance, going back in time and fixing a problem may only lead to other issues for the people around you. Life is so complex and we all face different problems, so it's impossible to have your life and your family's life under control. The casting and acting in this movie were perfect, and I felt like I'd already seen the movie a dozen times on my first watch. It's funny, heartwarming and sad, making you think about your complex relationships with loved ones. I think the final 10 minutes of this movie was one of the most beautiful memories of cinema I've had in recent times. It was like the perfect wrapping up of this movie, and I don't think I felt such a visceral change in emotions in such a short period of time. About Time made me think of humans differently, and it made me think of them in a more positive light. Aftersun follows the story of Sophie reflecting on a vacation she took with her father Callum 2 decades prior. This in help with the video camera that recorded parts of the holiday. This movie depicts themes of childhood, parenthood, depression, grief, and more. This isn't technically a spoiler, but I wish I had known it the first time I watched it. Nothing significant happens in this movie. There's no big event. It can sometimes feel tedious and slow, but watch the 96-minute film as is. The movie makes you think and pick up on all the subtleties and subtext. This movie slowly lets on about 30-year-old Callum's quiet dealings with depression and disassociation. While I've never had depression, seeing a man depicted with it on screen is really powerful. Millions of people struggle with mental health issues, and seeing this displayed on screen reminds you that 75% of suicides are male. Paul Mescal and Frankie Corio are brilliant in this movie, and I would have never guessed this was their first acting gig. Aftersun opens your eyes to the struggles your parents face that you may face alike now that you're older. I think it opened my eyes to how my parents are going through life for the first time too, and they don't have the answers to everything. They might get angry with you or struggle with mental health issues we may never know, but they are simply doing their best. They face financial issues they shield from us. They might struggle to get food on the table, or their job is soul draining, but they need it to keep afloat. And they hide their true emotions to maintain normalcy for their children to grow up in. Aftersun is a slow movie, but it allows you to appreciate all the simplicity and cinematography within. I truly cared for these characters and was worried for them throughout. The slowness of it allows you to build an understanding of both characters and actually care for them. Aftersun is one of those movies that left me thinking for days and weeks following it. And I think a good movie is one that makes you ponder on it for hours after you've finished it. And I spent the entire next day at work just thinking about it. The feelings and emotions of this movie hit me like a truck as I finished, and it profoundly changed my life and the thoughts about my parents. Dead Poets Society is set in a prestigious school in the late 1950s and follows the story of a new English teacher's unconventional teaching methods that help bring students out of their shells and to seize the day. I put this movie off for so long because I didn't think I'd like it, and I don't really care for films that focus on teaching, but this movie has changed my life. This movie depicts themes of discipline, carpe diem, identity, and more. The core teaching lesson of this movie is carpe diem, a Latin phrase translated into seize the day. Mr. Keating emphasises this phrase and teaches his class that their lives are fleeting, so they should seize the day to make it count. It's basically like, you only live once and you should make a life worth living because you'll eventually die one day. One of his lessons teaches the boys how to determine the greatness of poetry, but is then followed by him telling them to rip out all of the pages of that section in the book. This is one of the examples of Mr. Keating's unconventional teaching habits and shows that he doesn't like conformity or only one thing being the right way. It's powerful because at Welton, conformity and following rules plays a big part in the students' lives there. The title, Dead Poets Society, is a group Mr. Keating once founded, and it followed a group of them meeting in a cave near the school grounds to read poetry aloud. Neil and a group of them decide to bring back the Dead Poets Society and follow the same rules. This is one of my favourites of Robin Williams' roles, and I think he absolutely nails it. Dead Poets Society reminds you to live life on your own terms, live passionately, and do the things that drive and inspire us. It can't all just be about working, making money, repeating the cycle, and eventually dying. This movie pushes that and tries to remind the viewers of it. Without getting into too much detail or spoiling anything, Dead Poets Society is one of the most heartbreaking movies I've ever seen, and left me with the feeling of a lump stuck in my throat. This movie has one of the most powerful endings, and I still just tear up thinking about it. This movie and Mr. Keating taught me that you have to live life on your own terms, and conforming to what everyone else tells you to do will stop you from living the life you want to live or what you believe in. The question, what will your verse be, will linger in your mind for hours or days after this movie has finished. Interstellar follows the story of Cooper, who has been tasked with leading a space mission through a wormhole to find a habitable planet for humans before humankind goes extinct. I'm not going to get too much into the plot because you've probably already watched this, but this movie depicts love, human connection, endurance, and sacrifice. It's probably one of my top 5 favourite movies of all time, and I think it's just such an excellent movie. The visuals are stunning, the cast is spot on, and I'm in awe of the soundtrack. This movie taught me the power of love and connections, and the scene of Cooper leaving never fails to make me a complete mess. I learned the power of humans and how far we'll go to keep each other alive, and it teaches you about the possible reality of Earth being degraded to a point where human life is no longer sustainable. Interstellar teaches you that love is one thing capable of transcending time and space, and many things in life are beyond human comprehension. It taught me that so many things will always be beyond my brain's comprehension, so I should just take it for what it is and try not to overthink it. It's one of the most heartbreaking movies I've ever watched and is in my definition of a movie that hurts so good. Interstellar also taught me about time and how everyone on Earth gets 24 hours a day, except for this crew on this mission, and it's what you do with those 24 hours that counts. Interstellar is one of those movies that will teach you more and more the more that you watch it. This movie will always hold a special place in my heart, and I try to watch it at least once a year. These 5 movies have changed my outlook or my perspective on life, whether it be from seizing the day or just understanding how complex and challenging it is to live life. Whether it's from characters, themes, or the overall message, movies can have a lasting impact on our lives and remind us how beautiful life is and our capacity for growth as people.